Are you over 60? Here are 7 mistakes that can make your recovery from a hospital stay even harder. If you're over 60, a hospital stay can go sideways for reasons that have nothing to do with the original illness that brought you there. You can enter the hospital because of pneumonia, but leave 3 days later weak, confused, dehydrated, constipated, and in possession of a medication list that looks like it was cobbled together by 7 providers who have never even met each other. And the hospital will say, "Good news! You're ready to go home." Ready according to whom? Because your legs have filed for unemployment, you haven't had a bowel movement since last Tuesday, and somebody discontinued your blood pressure medication, but nobody seems to know who or why. I'm a nurse, and I've watched small, preventable hospital problems pile up on a perfectly independent adult until suddenly they didn't seem so independent anymore. So, here are 7 hospital mistakes that I don't want you or someone you love to make, especially after 60. Number 7 is especially important because that mistake often doesn't reveal itself until you're already home, it's Saturday night, and every medical office in the country is currently sending patients to voicemail. Mistake number 1 is staying in bed until somebody explicitly tells you to get up. A hospital bed is very persuasive. It can raise your head, it can lower your feet, you can have your meals in it, it has fun buttons, and once you discover the hospital's warm blankets, you may be wondering how you can have the whole setup delivered directly to your home. But that bed is not your friend. It's a comfortable little strength thief. When you're sick, connected to tubing, and wearing a hospital gown that provides more ventilation than dignity, staying in bed can seem like the safe choice. Unfortunately, older adults can lose strength and mobility very quickly, especially during a hospital stay, because the less you move, the harder moving becomes. Then you get permission to go home, stand up, and realize that your legs may have been replaced with 2 undercooked breadsticks. This does not mean that you should leap out of your hospital bed and start doing walking lunges down the hallway with your IV pole in hand. Please don't make your nurse tackle you. It means you should ask, "Am I allowed to get out of bed? Can I sit in the chair for meals? Should I be walking? Do I need to have someone with me?" And if you normally use a walker or cane, make sure that the staff knows that. This is not the time to pretend you're an Olympic gymnast just because the physical therapist is attractive. Hospital fall precautions can also make patients afraid to move. You see the bed alarm clipped to your gown, the bright yellow socks, the wristband, all of the tubing connections, and think, apparently, I may have been classified as cargo. Those precautions do not necessarily mean that you should remain motionless. They mean you need to move safely with the appropriate assistance. Ask your nurse or physical therapist what you're cleared to actually do, and then do it. Really do it. Do it some more, because discharge day is not the day that you want to discover that walking 12 feet to the bathroom feels like a competitive endurance sport. Mistake number 2, leaving your hearing aids and glasses at home. I completely understand why families do this. Glasses are expensive. Hearing aids are expensive and tiny, and both are deeply committed to disappearing. You don't want them lost in the hospital laundry, wrapped in a dinner napkin, thrown away, or accidentally adopted by the confused patient down the hall who keeps wandering into your room. But when an older adult can't clearly see or hear, the hospital becomes like an alternate dimension to them. There are alarms sounding, people entering at all hours, lights turning on and off, unfamiliar faces and voices, and one person repeatedly asking you whether you remember what year it is. I mean, you knew what year it was before we woke you up at 4 o'clock in the morning to ask you. Without glasses, the nurse standing in the doorway may look like a threatening coat rack. Without hearing aids, me saying, "I'm going to flush your IV," can sound like, "Let's go do some Tai Chi." Now, the patient is understandably concerned, yet the nurse has no idea why. Being unable to hear or see correctly, being unable to see or hear clearly can increase disorientation, interfere with communication, and make it harder to participate in your own care. Bring the glasses, bring the hearing aids, bring the dentures, bring cases for everything, make sure everything is labeled, and make sure it's an actual protective case, not a tissue. A tissue is not a storage system. A tissue is how $3,000 hearing aids begin their new life at the county landfill. If the patient is prone to losing things, ask hospital staff how we can more safely store them. Family can also help keep track of these items. The goal is to make the hospital environment as understandable as possible, because if grandma can't see, can't hear, and doesn't have her teeth, we have taken away 3 of her major communication departments, and then started asking her complicated questions about her medication history. Mistake number 3. Taking every medication without asking what it is and what it is for. Let me be very clear. I am not telling you to refuse your hospital medication. I'm telling you to know what you're swallowing. In the hospital, your regular medications may be stopped. They may be adjusted, or they may be temporarily replaced. New ones may be added for pain, nausea, sleep, blood clot prevention, constipation, blood pressure, or blood sugar. Sometimes the hospital substitutes a different drug in the same category because that's what the pharmacy carries. By day 3, your medication list may have more plot twists than grandma's favorite daytime soap opera. So when the nurse brings your medication, it's completely appropriate to ask, "What are these? Is this one new? Why was my regular medication stopped? Will I continue taking this at home?" A good nurse should not be offended by that. We might be moving quickly, but we should still have the time to tell you what you're taking. What worries me is when somebody has been taking the same little white pill every morning for the last 15 years and then receives 4 unfamiliar little white pills in the hospital and says something like, "Well, I guess I'll assume that somebody around here knows what they're doing. Somebody probably does. The problem is that there may be 12 different somebodies involved. Doctors rotate. Specialists add medication. Orders change. The hospital pharmacy substitutes medication. Your home medication list may have been entered incorrectly when you first arrived. Healthcare workers are human, and unfortunately, your medication list was not delivered from the heavens on a stone tablet. Patients and families are an important safety check. Keep an updated list of your medication, doses, and why you take them. If possible, include vitamins, supplements, over-the-counter medications, and the name and phone number of your pharmacy. And before leaving the hospital, be sure to compare your old list against the new one. Do not assume that every bottle on your kitchen counter should still be taken. Before you leave, ask someone to help you comparing your old medication list to your new one. Ask them to clearly mark what you should take, what you should stop, and what has changed. Otherwise, you could accidentally take both the old dose and the new dose, or two medications that are meant to do the same thing. Mistake number 4, barely eating or drinking for the whole hospital stay. Listen, I get it. Hospital food has never been accused of Michelin stars. Someone removes the lid from your tray and presents you with 1 beige entree and 2 beige side dishes. Maybe a cup of something claiming to be coffee. So you take 3 bites, drink a half a bottle of water, and decide, I'm not hungry. That may not seem important while you're laying in bed, but your body is trying to recover from illness, injury, inflammation, possibly surgery, or maybe all. It needs fluid, it needs protein, and it needs calories. And your intestines, already offended by unfamiliar food, inactivity, stress, and pain medication, would appreciate some cooperation. This is how patients arrive home weak, dehydrated, and carrying a digestive system that's trying to close down for renovation. However, some patients have legitimate fluid or dietary restrictions because of heart failure, kidney disease, swallowing problems, surgery, or maybe another condition. So, don't secretly start drinking 2 gallons of water a day because somebody on YouTube told you that hydration is important. Ask, do I have a fluid restriction? Am I eating enough? Can I have a protein supplement? Why am I on this diet? And do we have a plan for my bowels? Yes, ask about your bowels. The hospital has already taken your blood, photographed your organs, and asked you to rate your pain while you were half naked. The time for modesty has passed, my friends. If you haven't had a bowel movement, say something, especially if you're taking opioid pain medication. Do not wait until day 6 when your colon has become a federally protected historical site. Mistake number 5, pretending that you understand your discharge instructions. Discharge is frequently presented like a game show finale. Congratulations, you're going home. Here are 11 pages of tiny print, 4 new medication changes, 3 appointments, 2 dressing changes, and 1 medical device nobody has demonstrated or ordered to your house. Your ride is waiting downstairs, transport has already arrived, and the printer at the nurse's station is making distressing noises. Any questions? And the patient says, nope. Why? Because nobody wants to be difficult. Nobody wants to delay discharge. And after 2 nights in the hospital, most adults would agree to join the circus to sleep in their own bed. But do you understand is not a useful question. Most of us automatically say yes, even when our brain is holding up a tiny sign that says, we understand nothing. Instead, use teach back. Say, let me repeat this in my own words and make sure I have it right. Then explain which medications you'll be taking, which medications you will stop, how to care for your wound, drain, or device, what activity is allowed, what you can eat or drink, when you need to follow up, when symptoms require a phone call, and which symptoms require immediate help. If you cannot explain the plan without reading it like a hostage statement, you don't understand the plan yet. Ask again. There is no prize for leaving the hospital 7 minutes earlier with the wrong instructions. Take pictures if appropriate. Write notes. Have a family member listen by phone. Ask whether printed instructions are available in larger type. And if someone says follow up soon, make sure you know what soon means. Tomorrow, in a week, before the next full moon. Healthcare is extremely fond of vague timelines. Make them give you a date. Mistake number 6 is letting your family speak over you. A helpful family member is priceless. They remember details, take notes, ask questions, and notice changes. But occasionally, a patient arrives with a family spokesperson who thinks that they've been elected to Congress. The doctor asks the patient, "How are you feeling?" And the family member says, "She's fine." The patient starts in, "Actually, she's always like this." The doctor asks about pain. "She has a very low pain tolerance." "Ma'am, unless you share a nervous system, please allow the witness to testify." If the patient can understand the discussion and communicate their wishes, speak with them, not over them. Older adults do not become supporting characters in their own healthcare just because their adult children have entered the room. And patients, if you want your family member involved, say so. Tell the team who should receive information and what role you want that person to play. You might say something like, "I want my daughter to take notes, but please direct your questions to me." Or, "I'm overwhelmed. Can you please explain this to both of us?" Of course, some patients genuinely cannot communicate or make decisions safely because of severe illness, dementia, sedation, confusion, delirium, or another reason. That is different, and a trusted representative may need to speak for them. But when the patient can speak, we need to hear their baseline. Is this confusion new? Is this weakness new? Does this person normally manage their own medication, cook, drive, and pay bills? The family member who knows the patient's normal functioning can be an invaluable source of information without conducting a hostile takeover of the interaction. Mistake number 7 is going home without knowing what happens next. You've made it through the hospital stay. You're wearing real pants, Everyone is relieved. Then you look at the discharge paperwork and realize you don't know when to remove the dressing. You don't know whether the swelling is normal. You don't know who is arranging physical therapy. You don't know which doctor you're supposed to call. And one prescription seems to have been sent to a pharmacy 3 states away. This is why discharge is not simply an exit. It is a transfer of responsibility from a building full of healthcare professionals to you and whoever is standing with you in your kitchen. Before leaving, you need answers to 5 questions. First, what exactly are you recovering from? Second, what medications am I taking now and which have stopped? Third, what should I safely be able to do at home? 4, who is following up with me and when? And 5th, what symptoms mean to call the office and which symptoms require a call to 911? Get actual contact information. Call your doctor is not a plan if you've seen 6 separate providers and you can't identify one of them without their hospital badge. Also ask, has home health actually been arranged? Has the equipment actually been ordered? Does the pharmacy have my medication? Can you safely enter your home? Can you reach the bathroom? Is there food? Is someone staying with you if you need help? Because discharged home sounds wonderfully official, but sometimes home means 14 stairs, an empty refrigerator, and a tiny dog who seems intent on becoming a fall hazard. A safe discharge plan has to work in the home where you actually live, not in an imaginary one story that discharge paperwork seems to assume everyone is returning to. The biggest threat to an older adult in the hospital is not always one major catastrophe. Sometimes it's a collection of small things. Too much time in bed, not enough food or fluid, missing glasses, an unexplained medication change, confusing instructions, a follow-up appointment nobody actually scheduled. Each problem looks manageable by itself, but together they can turn a simple hospital stay into a much longer period of recovery. Be polite, but participate. Ask what the medication is. Ask whether you should be walking. Ask someone to explain the plan again. Bring your hearing aids, your glasses, and an updated medication list. And please remember, asking questions does not make you a difficult patient. Pulling out your own IV because discharge is taking too long makes you a difficult patient. Asking questions makes you an informed one. I've spent more than 25 years in healthcare helping patients understand what is happening to their own bodies and what healthcare professionals sometimes forget to explain. If you're over 60, care for someone who is, or simply want to enter the hospital with a fighting chance of understanding the whole operation, then go ahead and subscribe, because in my next video, I'm explaining 6 things that every adult over 60 should bring to the emergency room. And no, the plastic shopping bag containing 17 medication bottles is not on the list. Thank you for watching, and if you learned something today, please gently tap the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.